Hey, welcome to God's Glory and Men's Real Stories. I'm excited that you're here. And if you're listening for the first time or you're back for another great episode, thank you for joining us. I want to start by letting you know that your story and what you may be going through, it matters. And you're not alone. So try not to worry about what chapter you're in, because if you can trust God with your story, He's going to breathe life back into it. So sit back with the community that cares about you and hopes that you feel God's love as well as see God's glory in men's real stories. So this podcast is nothing without the men God put it on their hearts to say yes to joining me. And I appreciate those who have also shown interest by filling out the Google Doc so that me and my team can sort through and really let God lead us to our future guests. But today's special guest is joining me by way of Miami, Florida, after a close friend of both of us said to me, you want to invite this brother on your podcast. So I'm excited to get to know him better today. And I would like to welcome Chip Turrisi to the episode. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Doing good, Robert. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, no, it's a blessing that I was able to sit down with you today, get to know you better. You know, it's often I get to sit down with people that I've been in a relationship with, I've maybe walked with through certain seasons, maybe I know them through my church or whatever. So it's always a blessing to sit down with somebody that I don't know as well, but other people, other friends of mine, I'm like, this is a guy you want to talk to. And of course, because I trust them, I'm like, yeah, no, if you say so, I trust you.
Yeah.
So before we even get started, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, just a little bit more about yourself to my audience, or to our audience.
Sure. Yeah. And I'll share here, but what's funny is Sammy, who's the guy who connected us. Sammy
Yeah.
and I have known each other only for a couple of years, but we were in the same place for about 7 years and never ran into each other. So it's so crazy, but we've become
So wild.
very close friends. But yeah, thank you again for having me on, Robert. My name is Chip Teresi, and I am, as you mentioned, based out of Miami, Florida, but was born and raised outside of Chicago, not in the city, outside the city. Those that are from Chicago always give you, some stuff if you say you're from in the city. But I grew up about 40 minutes outside the city. One of 5 kids. Grew up with 4 sisters, which was quite interesting of growing up. And then went to school up that way, up to college, and get married right after college, pretty young age at 22, and 32 now, about to turn 33 in about a month or so. And yeah, a little bit about me.
Wow. Nice. Very cool. So, and I love how you pointed that out, that like, yeah, you can't just say that you're from Chicago. You got to say exactly, like, I was outside of Chicago. You're right. People do give you a hard time about like where what's the location? What's the street? Nah,
Exactly.
You're not from Chicago. Or in this case, I'm being from Charlotte. I'm like, yeah, no, you're from Concord, dude. There's a difference. There's a difference in Charlotte and Concord. You have to be specific. But no, that's cool, man. So I noticed that as I was talking to Sammy about you, I recognized that you and him, y'all had a similarity in that you were both married, and he just recently had a child. And so when I was talking to you through email, you were like, well, yeah, I want to get this in before my child gets here. And I'm like, okay, wow, everybody's having kids. And I just finished having kids. The last kid I had was a dog. And listen to me, you can't give your kids back.
Yep.
I'm ready to get his dog back.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I know that sounds bad to some people. They're gonna be like, I'm sorry. The kids. If I had a choice, I'm ready to get a dog back. But I love him. No, he loves me. But he drives me crazy.
Did you want it originally? Did you push for the dog originally, or was someone else pushing for it?
So it's so funny how when you have kids, they all want dogs. When they see dogs, they want dogs. And you're like, you don't want a dog. You don't want the responsibility of a dog. More importantly, I don't want the responsibility of a dog. I have the responsibility. The responsibility I currently have is enough. But they're like, no, I think. And so the crazy thing is that my wife is allergic to dogs. It's a running joke that a dog would kill my wife. But it was my wife's idea. And I was like, so like, you love them so much that you're willing to give them a dog, knowing that it could possibly kill you.
Okay.
I can't argue with that one. What am I supposed to do? Like, so it was almost like a quick ass. The puppies, they're on sale. I don't think I don't think this is a question of do I want a dog now. I think it's a question of like, sure.
Sure.
Like if you're this happy about getting a dog, knowing that you're in somewhat your body doesn't really do well with dogs, let's do it. So here we are, 4 kids in. One of those kids is a puppy with 4 legs, and it's been a challenge. He wakes me up in the morning like, hey, ready to go outside. Um, he then likes to chew on stuff that doesn't belong to him.
Great.
It's awesome. That's being so sarcastic right now. But no. But the beauty is that I remember that stage where I was at that place where I was about to have a kid, and I can like only imagine like the thoughts that fill your mind. Like, or you know what? The beauty of this show is that I don't have to imagine. Like I can say like, hey, Chip, as you prepare to be a father, what does it feel like? Just like what are the thoughts that cross your mind?
Yeah, man. Uh, it's definitely a testimony for us that we think about just about every day because we were trying for about 2.5 years. And what's so funny about trying to become a parents is that you think it happens overnight. Like it
Hmm.
happened just oh, we're gonna
Yeah.
do this. All right, cool. Month or two, we're gonna be pregnant, and it took a couple of years, 2.5 years to have it happen. And so for us, when I think about a lot, it's just God's faithfulness of how
Mm,
He comes through, and
yeah.
it really has been a testimony in many ways for us of how God moved and in a mighty way. Um, and so I think I can get into that a little bit farther too, but I think just kind of high level thoughts that I think about is I recognize that I think there is some type of shift that happens when you have your own child of a new layer of love in a way from what I've observed from
Yeah.
my parents and their love towards me, of how I observe my friends who have kids, and just a shift that happens. And what's interesting is not only just with believers and those that believe in Jesus, but even non-believers. There's this
For
shift that
sure.
happens.
Yeah.
And what I'm excited about too is just to kind of experience that shift in a way, or maybe new perspective. And then also, I think it's really hard to fully understand what Jesus did and what God did in terms of, sacrificing, having Jesus be the sacrifice for us,
Mm,
of understanding that father son relationship. And so I'm really excited, not only from just a human standpoint, but also spiritually, of what that experience is going to be like, of just being able to fully know what God did, for us.
wow.
And
Yeah.
so that
No.
genuinely is what I think about a lot. And I studied psychology through college, and so it's a big part of what I think about. And I think there is some type of like evolutionary shift that happens. And I don't mean that in like, Big Bang evolution stuff, but I think what God put in us is for us to actually want to keep our offspring alive. And so I think that's why we care so much about,
Yeah.
the DNA of the child. And so because they have the same DNA, you want to keep them alive and keep them growing, keep them healthy. And you can see it because, you have someone who just had a baby. All they talk about, all they're showing you is baby pictures. It's all on their wallpapers, on their phone screen. It's everywhere. It's all I can talk about, all I can think about. They become consumed with it. And so I think
For
that's a
sure.
beautiful thing, right? But it's just so
Yeah.
funny to see that transition take place. And it's something I think deep within us that God puts in us as an instinct that that I'm excited to see that shift. But really, beyond that, I think I mentioned kind of the testimony thing. There was a few things that we were praying for many years, and really me specifically praying for, but one of those was being able to conceive and to be able to have a child, my wife and I. And we're about to hit 10 years married next month, which is pretty wild to
Nice.
think about.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. So, having kids was on that list. We were also at the time. Actually, we started this journey in Miami 2.5 years ago. We moved to Charlotte in the middle of that journey, and we went there really on a leaning on God heavily to make that move, because we actually didn't want to move to Charlotte at the time. Not that we like weren't excited about it, but we just love Miami. We love where we were planted, and we were also
Sure.
cautious that making sure that we weren't leaving a spot that God wanted us in here in Miami. But we knew it
Mm.
was supposed to be temporary, 1 to 2 years when we moved for my wife's job. And so the second piece of it was really just trying to be able to find a house down here in South Florida and to find a home where we can raise kids, an area that's safe. And, South Florida is very expensive. And it not only expensive, but it's just hard to find good areas to raise kids. And I travel a bit
Right.
for my job. So also having a spot where my wife feels safe too, as I'm maybe out of the house. And
Sure.
then also being able to have the option down the road to be able to have, my wife stay home whenever that takes place, but being able to, have income to be able to make that happen and feel like we're comfortable. And so really within, those were prayers I had for probably 5+ years. I never really thought of it that those were kind of reoccurring prayers. I never really put it together as a group and thinking about those things, but they were
Mm.
always top of mind for me.
For
And
sure.
uh, all that happened within like a 1 to 2 month span. All came to pass. It all kind of fell through, like in a good way. And so there's that new song Elevation came out with called All of a Sudden, and that's been a huge
Yes.
theme for us. And so it's just crazy to see how just God moved. It was like, I know it's Pastor Stephen Furtick's message too. It was a steady hand for a sudden blessing back
Wow.
by this time
Yeah.
last year, or maybe even this time last year. And really it was so powerful for us of just saying like, you might not see wind, you may not see rain. But essentially like God's going to provide. It's going to come
For
through,
sure. Yeah.
And so that's exactly what he did. It didn't seem like it was coming. It didn't seem like it was happening. And then just like, boom, just back to back to back. And just God providing is probably the first weekend we moved back to Miami in a home that was a huge gift and a blessing. We conceived, so it was just like
Wow.
perfect timing, perfect placement. And so for us, like God just moved in such a powerful way. And so as I think about having this child, Mia is her name, is just
Nice.
thinking through like,
Yeah.
man, God just moved in such a powerful way. And so there's just a lot of emotions. And I think just feeling as ready as I can be. Like, I don't feel like I'm ready or perfect by any means, but
Of
I'm confident,
course.
like, if we have this child coming, God's going to equip me and I just need to stay close to him and we'll
For
figure it out,
sure. No, for sure. And there's so many people. A lot of times people assume that it's only the females who go through this journey of like, God, am I meant to be a parent? God,
Mm.
is this something you want to give me? We see a ton of accounts of the women in the Bible who are like, crying out to God, give me a child. And so we assume that that's not something that males
Mm.
do.
Sure.
And
So true.
or we assume sometimes that it's not even a prayer of ours, that God, I want to see, I want a child. And if it is a child, it needs to be a boy who can carry on but we don't ever look at that from a male standpoint of like,
Mm.
that's something I desire. Um and as you were talking there, I couldn't help but think like, as we step into these prayers, a lot of times we know that our wives want a child.
Mhm.
As we step into those prayers with them, does it become a desire of ours to see them receive what they want, and it more importantly become a desire of ours to want that as well? Even though for some of us, we're scared of the idea of being a father
Mhm.
and what that may look like, whether you've had great fathers in your life or whether you're like, I don't know what the job looks like. I don't know what the job
Yeah.
entails. And speaking from a person who deals with a lot of people who are seeking maybe new direction when it comes to jobs, or seeking new direction when even the imposter syndrome hits their mind of like,
Yeah.
am I the person qualified for this particular role? Like, do you think that they'll see the value when I have a hard time seeing the value?
Mhm. Sure.
I always wonder what that's like, of like when that switch hits and somebody's like, yes, we're considering you, or yes, you're going to be a father. Now it's like, all right, mentally, I have to begin to believe that I'm called and I'm equipped for this.
Mhm.
And I could say that when that switch hit for the first time with me, I didn't feel like I was equipped.
Mm.
I personally, I had no idea what it was to be a father,
Hmm.
or how that looked, or what that role really looked like. And so for me, it brought about anxiety. The one
Mm.
thing I did know how to do was I could get out here and I could grind.
Sure.
Like okay, well I'll build up a big enough like let me build the nest, and everybody else take care of like what's going to be required of it. But like
Sure.
let me just build up the nest. And a lot of times I think, and I believe, as I converse with men, I believe that that's like the extent
Hmm.
of how far we see it to play a part in preparing for a child,
Hmm.
whether you know what to do, whether you had great examples, or whether you just have no example and have no idea. And so as I sit here and think through those thoughts, what I mean, like, what was it like? Even though I know it was a prayer of yours, what was it like to like sit with the like, okay, the green light's on, like we're on the clock now, 9 months and counting. Like, what was that like to kind of sit with that from your perspective?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing too you mentioned early on was just around the fact that like it usually is a like more of a female thing of like feeling that you can't conceive. And even if I think through scripture too, it's only really they talk about women who are barren, who feel dishonored. Like it's often, what it's, Sarah in the Bible, I think even Elizabeth couldn't conceive, with um, John the Baptist. So I think it's riddled throughout the Bible, but
It's
it's all
true.
women
Yeah.
focused. I don't think there's anything I can recall that shows that like a man was actually looking to have, have kids and conceive. Um, so it's a really interesting thought that you bring that up. And, but I think in general, I think for me, uh, I have a really good father as an example. And, I think he's still here. We still talk all the time. We're still super close, and same with my mom too. But I think he was a phenomenal example of how to be a great dad and still is. And what's interesting is that his dad, uh, from what I've heard, was a great man, but struggled a lot with alcoholism and severe alcoholism. And so that was riddled, and to some extent still is challenges in extended family and in our lineage. Um, but he never had an example. But he still was able to, through the grace of God, put his faith in Jesus, stay on that path, and become really great example of someone who can love their kids, be a provider. And what's interesting too for me is I know you're the third. I'm actually also the third. So my full name is Charles Philip
Very cool.
Teresi the third, and but always gone by Chip. But I just think about it too, even in like generationally, of just like I know he had a really tough upbringing because of some of that environment that he was in, and so um, I'm just grateful that my wife and I are on this journey of faith and following Jesus, and it's imperfect, but we try to make him number one in our life as best we can. And so I really haven't had much fear about it. Like I've had those thoughts creep in for sure. Like, am I going to be enough? Am I prepared for this? And the truth is, like, no, I'm probably not prepared. I've never done this before, but
Sure.
I have such a good community of fathers around me too through our church down here in South Florida. So I have really good examples near me of who I could go to at all different stages. Like Sammy, who just had a kid a handful of months
Right.
ago, or someone that's, got 4 kids like yourself, and maybe a handful of years down the road of in that journey. So I have a lot of people I can reach out to and lean on to. Again, have that personal experience with my own parents of being amazing parents of raising, me and my sisters. And so there are times where I hesitate, but what I'm confident in too is my wife, and she actually came here to the U.S. as a nanny, like a 1 year visa, and so she took care of 3 kids for a solid year, one being like a six
Yeah.
month old,
Okay.
and so she's got
Nice.
some experience, but even on that, she's just so naturally good with children too, and such like a loving heart, such a compassionate heart, and so I have confidence that she's going to be the best mom in the world, and not that it's going to make it easy for me in some ways, but I think she's just she's going to be so good at it. So I have no fear in that aspect of it. And
Nice.
and so yeah, I think as I mentioned, yeah, times that thoughts will creep in of thinking that I may not be enough, I may not be ready for this, but I keep trying to reject those because again, there's so many things in this walk of faith that it's always like that, right? God almost wants you to, I think, rely onto Him. I know He wants you to
Hmm.
rely on Him, and so that's what
Yeah.
I'm doing. You know, of knowing that He'll equip me. There's going to be challenging times. There's going to be hard times. There's going to be no sleep at times. I'm confident of that, and there's nothing I can really fully do to prepare for that until it really happens. You know, so
So true.
I'm excited to step into that journey. I know it's not going to be an easy one, but I know it's going to be worth it, and that
Yeah.
excites me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and I agree with everything you just said. In that, it's recognizing, even down to the thoughts. It's recognizing that this exists, or these try to creep into my mind, and I feel like I have the foundation. I have fathers. I have a father who has already equipped me and prepared me for this moment. More importantly, this moment, the way it happened, the way it played out, the way you just shared of how it played
Yeah,
out, the way God put it all together and kind of just perfectly all of a sudden, it's like he wouldn't have done that if he hadn't already put in me what I needed to
exactly.
be able to do what I'm going to do. And I think when you have that mindset, because a lot of people, um, whether it be non-believers or just people whose faith is just kind of like, yeah, but God, we've never been here before.
Hmm.
God's like, no, you've never been here before. Like,
Yeah.
I've been here. Matter of fact, not only have I been here, but I have been here in your story
Hmm.
because I've written this part. I know
Yep.
what comes next. And so, in trusting that it's for my good and it will be for his glory
Yep.
now and then, I think that does give you a peace to know that I'm stepping into a new season, but I'm not stepping into it alone.
Hmm.
And, there was recently a friend of mine who had a child. And when I say that I appreciated her so much
Hmm.
for showing those moments where the baby wouldn't stop crying and she sat there rocking him in tears, because I was like, that's real. Now
Hmm.
that's a moment that most people won't show in our lives. But regardless of what that moment is for us, those are moments that need to be not only experienced, but shared with people
Yeah.
who are going to come behind you and be like, dude, mine didn't look that pretty. Like
Hmm.
it didn't look that pretty. It looked just like she's showcasing. Um, and I think when that happens, people can go through situations and know, oh, well, this person told me that, like, as long as I seek God through this, that he's never going to leave or forsake me. I
Hmm.
can trust him. He's faithful. And so I'm going to walk in this and I'm going to shed the stress and the anxiety to know that he's already gone before me.
Yeah.
So, what was it like living outside of Chicago with four
Hmm.
sisters? Or were you the oldest or were you the middle child?
Yeah. So within the five, I'm the second youngest. So uh, and my parents cranked him out quick. So
Okay.
between me being the second youngest and the oldest, there's four of us, and we're all within 5 years. Uh,
Wow.
so four of us in
Wow.
5 years, and then the last one, the fifth one, the baby, the family was 5 years younger than me. So she was kind of a little bit of a gap between us.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, really great memories growing up. I think uh, as I reflect back, I was definitely like the peacekeeper as best I could be, like unintentionally. Uh, definitely learn about the different sibling rivalries, and what's funny is it kind of changed year to year of who was kind of fighting with the other one for seasons at a time. But no, it was great. We got along really well and still do. And as we've all kind of gone into our adult lives, it's funny how different we all are as we think about it, but we are all still so close growing up. And yeah, like one at this point, one is a veterinarian at a zoo, and we have one that's a lawyer, one that's a real estate agent, and mom of three. One that's in the art space and sales space and entrepreneur space. And so we're all so different in our journey right now. But no, it was really great. All positive memories. I think like, we always just running outside, playing games together, playing a ton of sports. And I do know it drove my dad and I to be very close, I think, just to survive all the, all the hormones that were going around at different times. But no, it was really good. And I think it really has, it's funny. Every time I tell people I'm having a girl, they're like, oh, you're going to be perfect for that. Like you were, you know, raised around so many women. So it's probably prepared me to be able to be a girl dad, which I'm pumped about. But yeah, no, all
Yeah.
good stuff. And thankfully, we're all really close, and most of them are still up in Chicago. And so at least a couple times a year, we all go up there, get together, and so it's always a blast. But yeah, really grateful for the upbringing, and um, yeah, I think it was a way for me to be able to um, I think find outlets too. Like I played a lot of sports, and that kind of was a way I could really uh, get away and be able to hang with other guys, I guess.
Right,
Uh,
right.
eh, you
Community.
know, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but it was good. I think overall it shaped me who I am today, and it prepared me for the future.
No, I think what I mean, you study psychology. I think we can all look back at what shaped us
Hmm.
to the space that we're in now. And
Yeah.
a lot of the stories that we talk about here and different, as we just unpack men's stories, as they share different things, you can always see a correlation of like this happened then, and even though it happened then, it still plays a part now. Like
Hmm.
like if you do the math, and not that I'm not great in math, but a lot of times I can see things. God has given me like he's definitely given me a discernment to recognize how we carry things into our future,
Hmm.
from childhood,
Sure.
where people can obviously recognize that, oh, well, you're having a girl, so you're gonna be great around girls. You've been around girls all your life. Were there ever any things that you felt like growing up that what your dad imparted on you have continued to either provide like this moment of like clarity now, or even maybe like a moment of like, Dad, I appreciate everything you imparted on me, but I also can recognize that I had to adjust the sail a little bit
Hmm.
as far as like how I raise or how I show up for my wife or different things like that.
Hmm.
And not to harp on dad or beat on dad or anything like
Sure.
that, because I think all of our dads are great,
Yeah.
despite like how they played out, how everything played out. But like I always wonder that.
Yeah. I think there's definitely so much I've gleaned from it. I think our pastor always says like there's always more caught than taught many times, meaning just through observation and
Mm,
conversation and seeing how they handle things. And so I think for me, one of the really positive things that stands out is I think just his generosity. I think he's always been someone who is super generous with his time. Like never missed a baseball game or basketball game. Was always there, even though he had his own business to run. And so he's always generous there, and even just with like anything, with what he's always coming home with little gifts for us as kids. And I think just being able to, he'd always say like if something like broke, he'd be like, "Don't worry, we can get another one." And it wasn't because we had a lot of finances, because it wasn't like we were, it was because of that. It was more just like a mindset of like, just don't worry
right.
about it. I'll provide in a way. And it was just
Yeah.
out of generosity too. And so I think many things there. I think a work ethic too. I'll never forget there was one time, uh, because I actually worked for my dad. So he's a carpenter. And so I'm a carpenter's son, no big deal. Uh, but so yeah, he's been a carpenter for 30 plus years and still doing it. And but from the time I was probably 14 years old until the time I graduated college, it was actually 23, 24, was helping him through the summers. And so he's an expert like deck builder. He'll build like sheds or gazebos, pergolas. He's just a complete craftsman, you know.
Mm.
And so from the time I really every summer through high school, through college, I'd go back, work for him. I absolutely loved it. Being outside in the summers, it was hot at times for sure. You're carrying 80-pound bags of concrete or, lumber all day long. And so it was a good workout, a good physical challenge. My dad always joked like, I should be paying him because I'm getting a tan and like a gym membership, everything like that. But there was one time I was staying at a buddy's house the day before I was supposed to work. It was during the summer. So I was staying at his house, and I don't know if I forgot to set an alarm or snoozed it, but I woke up late. And so I remember I called him. I was supposed to be at the shop at like 7 a.m. It was probably 7:30, 7:45. I called him because I didn't even leave yet. And I was like, hey, sorry, I woke up late. And he's like, just get to the shop and don't ever be late again. And what's funny is we like, he's never been, super hard on stuff like that. But that was one moment that stands out. And really, I think since that time, I was probably, 15, 16 or so. And I don't think I've ever been like late, as in we were joking about it before that I showed up early even to this.
Yeah.
And so I think it just ever since that day was like, all right, I'm just not going to be late wherever I go to. But that really stood out and it's really, I think, has served me well, even in moments like that I can reflect on. But in general, it's funny because I think about spending 10 summers together, let alone our whole, my whole childhood together, but we never fought. There was really never really one time that you could really say that we went into like a heavy conflict. And it was really just one hot day. We were working outside and it was like an extremely short exchange of like, you should do this. And I was like, no, we should do that instead. And like, that was probably the worst of an argument we had and we ever have had in my 32 years of being here. So we've always gotten along super well. And so I think that's a testament to who he is too. And again, his love for not only me, but all of us as kids. I would say on the side that I did have to kind of learn through on my own, was that of realizing like that wasn't for me, the carpentry side. And so for me, that was actually a kind of struggle as I've reflected back as a kid was, my dad is an expert at this. He's so naturally good at it and gifted at it. And for me, like I enjoyed doing pieces of it, but it didn't come natural to me. The way he could problem solve things, like just didn't compute the same way. I could just tell like mentally I'm built different to do something different. And it took a little bit to understand that, of that I can still help, I can still play, I can still be valuable to what I'm doing and help. But for a future career path, this probably isn't going to work out for me. Right. And so I think for me, it's just like feeling that I wasn't as good at that was tough at times because I just could never, even now, like I just know, like even if I have 1% of what my dad can do, I'm still better off than probably the next guy because of how good he was. But for me, it's kind of removing that from my identity that I don't have to be good at what he's amazing at in the same way to be feeling that I'm sufficient, in whatever category as a man, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so I think for me was really recognizing that over, it took a period of time of just being able to unwrap that of recognizing my identity is not tied up into what I do, and we're all good at different things. Good. And I think I think it's Albert Einstein's quote that, if a fish judges its ability to climb a tree, it's going to live its whole life feeling like failure because, it's meant to swim. It's meant to be in the water. It's not a frog. It's not a monkey. It's a fish supposed to be in water. And so I think for me, I was that fish trying to judge myself on the ability to climb a tree at times.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us are doing that all the time. And I think we still have to pay attention to that, of the criteria which we're judging ourselves of being sufficient in whatever category of life. It depends on what you're measuring that from, and so I think for me, that's probably one thing as I think about, of a career path, even which, I'm in the recruiting space and the career space. And so that was something that was, something that probably stands out the most of being able to recognize and kind of shift my identity to other things, especially being Jesus, can really help with that.
Yeah. Whoa. Okay. Whew. Okay. You said a lot there. Okay. Wow. Okay. So I want to go back to the part where you were talking about like recognizing that I'm not my dad, even though I look up so much to him. Cause I could tell as you were sharing, it was like there didn't need to be a lot of, conversation that day when it came to you being late. It was almost like less about I let him down, but I feel like I've let myself down of not showing up like him.
Yep.
And he's never, not to say he's never late, but like
Sure.
in your mind, you probably looked at it like he's never late. So why am? And so I recognize that when we have like somebody like somebody we look up to that we want to be like, we want to play like, we want to work like, we want their work ethic, everything about them. Even if we don't have the same skill or gift they have, it begins to weigh on us. You said it so great, and that it begins to weigh on us, even down to like how we show up. Like, man, am I showing up like this person? And I'm sitting here and I'm like, how do you get out of the mindset of like, God gave this person that gift, but that didn't mean that he gave me the same gift just because I'm in proximity to them. I think that can be a lifelong struggle of like, I'm supposed to be everything like my dad, but I don't have the same skill set that he has. And I see people every day look at people that they want to be like, but realize that they're not getting the same results as that person. And it becomes frustrating because what it tells me is that I'm not working hard enough. I'm not doing everything they're doing. I'm not like maybe I don't need to sleep as much and maybe I need to do this. So I am burning the candle at both ends just to show up like this person. And you're telling me that maybe I wasn't supposed to be them. I'm not supposed to be them, but I'm told by everybody else that if I work hard enough, I can be them. And I think that is a struggle we can sit back and watch people live out every day. I mean, think about how many men want to go to the NBA versus how many men are actually in the NBA.
Sure.
And not even talking sports. I mean, think about how many people want to go to a certain college, but there's only a certain amount of spots. But because my father and my mother went there, I have to go here.
And I'm a failure
and
if I don't.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yes, that speaks to like who I am now. I failed you guys. I failed the family because I didn't show up and I didn't present myself and eventually become you all.
Yeah, I think there's so much of that in the Bible too. Like that's why I love how God uses the people he chose and the extra context he gives. Because I think about one of the stories I related the most to was actually the story of Gideon. And really for me, like growing up, I was actually a really small kid. Like even just like it's actually almost comical when they, you go to the doctor's appointment and they give you're in the X percentile of height and weight. I don't know what region this was in, but no joke. So I was 4th percentile for height at my age. And get this, 0 percentile for weight, meaning I must have actually set the lowest bar in what, again, I don't know if it's a city, the county, whatever it is.
I'm so mad you remember that. You've been carrying that.
You're right. No, it's so true. And so like, it's crazy, but like, and what's great, what's also interesting is my birthday, my birthday was either going to put me as the youngest in a grade above or the oldest in the grade below. And even though, so I ended up being kind of the older kid in a younger grade going through school, but was still the smallest. And so for me, I actually related so much to Gideon because like when God called him, he's like, I'm in like the least clan. Like this is the weakest clan. I'm the least in my family. Not that I felt the least in my family, but I was like, I identify with that in many ways. And even I played a lot of sports and I was pretty decent at sports through baseball, basketball. And even in the gym, I still remember like I was by far the smallest and by far the weakest. Like, I could run faster than anyone else. I could outwork people.
Feel seen right now.
Yeah. Like you don't want to celebrate that, right? Growing up, like it's not a good thing to have that, but that was really part of my identity. And so what I'm encouraged by is God still called him, you know,
Yeah.
even in him perceiving himself. He was struggling with identity issues of feeling like he was the weakest and the smallest, and still called him. And same with, David, as what was it, Samuel, that came there to a house, was going through and trying to pick, the next king, and it wasn't the ones that looked the most handsome or the most well built. It was just, it wasn't from the outside, it's from the inside that God cares about. And so I think, maybe going back to what you're saying, I think, you have to stop looking outside. Essentially, you have to stop looking to
Yeah.
external factors to benchmark yourself. It's really from the inside, from the heart, that God cares about, and what you need to benchmark yourself off is how close is your heart to God, and how obedient are you to Him. And that's really, I think, where you should be setting your worth in, not in the percentiles of height and weight, or against
Sure.
maybe someone else's path that's not your own path. I think it's critical to shift and put that reliance and that identity in Jesus.
Yeah. No, I look, you killed it there. Cause everything you just said, I couldn't help but smile because I had to take that same journey
Yeah.
from the story of Gideon to the story of David to the
Mhm.
story of Jacob,
Sure.
realizing that the people this world deem successful and worthy and the next in line are not the people that God sees
Mhm. Sure.
as the one he wants to use, and not that he can't use them and not that he won't use them, but he in every last one of those stories, he took the person that if you were to ask us how the story's going to end, we'd be like, oh, well, no, he's definitely going to take David's older brother. I mean, look at him. I mean, come on, that's king material. Of course, he's going to use Esau because look how strong he is. He's the
Yeah.
hunter. He's the provider. That's a man's man right there. You look at all these stories and you're like, why would he choose Gideon? Like, come on, dude. Like, the way you pick people on for this basketball team is not the way I picked them. Because, when we sit there on the sideline, I won't speak for you, but I was normally last picked,
Same.
even though I felt like I was the tallest. I'm like, I mean, today, but no, it wasn't how the
Yeah.
world saw me. The way they saw me was that he's not going to be who we need for this particular job. And the way God sees it is that he's exactly who I need for this particular job. And so it's just all in perspective of how you see yourself, what you feel like
Mhm.
outside of, well, you know what? Let me set that to the side. It's not always what you feel,
Mhm.
because what you feel, what the limitations have been told to you, basically say, no, it's not in the cards for you, brother. But now I think Stephen Furtick recently said it in his book. If you're going to argue with God about your limitations on like, well, I was the smallest,
Mhm.
I'm the, then eventually he's going to stop arguing with you about what he wants to do in your life. Because our earthly limitations will always tell us why we can't be used, or why we can't be a great father, why we can't be a great husband,
Mhm.
or show up in the workplace or wherever in a way that, well, all of my limitations tell me this is not possible.
Yeah.
Everything I've learned about myself, everything I've seen about myself tells me it's not possible. And so I just think that in itself is just like, it speaks to the desire to want to have a voice in your ear that's telling you the opposite of what everything around you from childbirth to now has told you about yourself, because
Mhm.
he truly knows what's going to happen. And yeah, yeah. And I sit back and I think, yeah, no, there's no way in the world I could have told you this like 4 years ago. I'd have been like, no, all my limitations tell me that I can't do this. But now I'm realizing even where I sit now, I'm like, but God,
Yep.
that's all I got for you. But then God came in and he showed me that everything that I thought was against me was actually for me.
Mhm.
And you basically you shared that so well. So with the relationship, that you had with your dad, would you say that most of your relationships are mimic off that relationship when it comes to like even like your the relationship you have with your wife? Because I noticed that you said you were the peacemaker. You also said that you had very few fights with like your dad. And I recognize that sometimes people try to say, well, if you're not confrontational, if everything is always just, then how is that possible? Like there's no disagreements.
Mhm.
And I never forget one time I was watching a couple and they were like, somebody was like, yeah, based on what we see, you guys never fight. And the guy was sitting there like, wait, do you think that's even possible? So how does that play out in your life?
Mm.
Coming from a place of like, I've always been the peacekeeper. I've
Sure.
always just kind of like kept the peace and it didn't win. How does that continue to work in the relationships you continue to foster?
Mhm. Yeah, I think, one thing I've learned is, are you familiar with the DISC style, the DISC personality assessment?
Yes.
Oh,
That'll
I think
work.
for
Yep.
one, knowing yourself is really helpful. So I think we even do that for those that are trying to volunteer or serve at our church. We take everyone through that too, and I
Okay.
think it's powerful to know that too. I think this is like a secular assessment. It's not like a scriptural thing, but for me, just knowing I'm a pretty heavy like S and an I on that scale, and so S just really they really are heavy focused on relationship rather than like super focused
Hmm.
and getting stuff done. That's not to say I'm not like that, because I definitely am at times, but really the relationship's more important in terms of how you view it than getting stuff done. And that's really in the context of a workplace, but it impacts
Okay. I can
relationships
see that.
too.
I can dig that.
Um,
Yeah.
but the S side of me is like really, like we're good if we have harmony in the relationship. And so
Mm.
like for me, that's a something I've recognized just in my personality, where some other people just might be, it's really focused on getting stuff done, and they can kind of care lesser about the relationship being in a good place, and there's benefits to both of those things, right? That's more
Sure.
like a D or maybe a C. And so depending on what you're trying to do, and the context of relationship is a little bit different, but there are some similarities. And so for me, I kind of know that about myself, that I lean towards trying to have harmony, have peace. At the same time, I have to really lean into conflict when I know it's coming. Like, so if I recognize something needs to change or a conversation needs to happen, again, whether this is in a workplace, in relationship with my wife, it is feeling that tension to coming and be like, okay, cool. I need to force myself to lean into this to make sure that we are going to stay healthy in a way, So I think
Yeah.
earlier on in our marriage, when Jesus was not the center of it, the first couple of years, there was a lot more of those conversations happening, and a lot more tension, a lot more conflict. And so the one thing too you have to be careful of too is there's a good book called Crucial Conversations that I highly recommend, and they talk about silence versus violence, right? And violence could actually be a physical thing, but it's really leaning onto more of a purely in words and kind of verbal abuse. And so some
Right.
people in a conflict, might be more that violent side. Some people might be more the silent side, where they give the cold shoulder, they withdraw. And so for me, I try to, you got to lean in the middle of those, right? Of trying to not withdraw, not avoid the conflict, which I may tend to do if my focus is trying to have harmony. And so I know I need to be intentional about doing that. And same with performance things at work. With some years ago of having an employee that's not doing the best job, and it's like, okay, I don't want to have this conversation, but I need to
Right.
have this conversation.
Right.
And so I think in order to have health, you need to identify those opportunities to go into conflict, and really go in there with obviously the best intent, the best motivation, and recognizing that I have to go through this in order for this to get better in some way, you know.
Yeah.
But I
No.
would say, overall, yeah, we don't like fight a ton. We don't have a ton of conflict. We definitely are, even this past couple weeks, irritable towards different things that are happening, and you know, uh, ways that I wake up. I always say this, I wake up every day selfish, and I have to really get that off of me every day. Of just being able to submit to the Holy Spirit and submit to reading scripture and trying to worship. And so for me, is like a constant battle of trying to get that off me and really focus, on trying to be more like Christ. And the more I'm like him, the less I need to, you know, go into those battles sometimes because I'm just avoiding stuff because I'm doing less stupid things often if I can do that, you know.
That's good. I never thought about it like that, but yeah, waking up every day, very selfish of like how I feel. Ooh, I haven't had this yet. And 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 then we end up handing that over to the people around us. We some not purposely, but
Sure.
we kind of yeah. And
It's
so no, that's a good point.
it's like manna. It's an everyday thing. You know, this is an everyday thing that you have to there's not enough for tomorrow. You know, I feel like the you trying to be more like Christ is not something that can be left over to the next day. You got to do it every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a choice every
It's a
day.
choice.
I like that. You're right. No, that's so true. And man, I've never thought about it from the mana standpoint of like, you know, what you do today is not going to carry over till tomorrow. You're gonna have to wake up and make that choice again tomorrow to show up, to show up in a certain way, to refrain from certain things. I wish I could say, hey God, just you could just give me the carryover. Like just take that away from me completely. Like, can you please not have me wake up with that? But like, no, every day it's a choice that I have to make
Mm-hmm.
to say, I'm going to step into this situation in this way. I'm going to show up in this manner. And I appreciate you even sharing, just the piece on like how you show up, because
Mm-hmm.
I recognize everybody's not the same, which is why they have these assessments. They have these
Sure.
things of like allowing you. I call them the self-aware assessments.
Mm-hmm.
They may not speak to you for the rest of your life, and because I feel like we're constantly evolving and changing and growing. Well, we should be. We
Sure.
should be. Let me not say we're all doing that. We should all be wanting to evolve and grow. And I think a lot of these assessments give you an idea where you're at in this current season of like how you're showing up and how you may shy away from this area, but how you may show up in this area better. And so it allows you to recognize how and why you respond to people the way you do. And so when you
Mm-hmm.
know that, it's not like you're just doing something like this is just who I am, but you're doing it from a place of like, this is who I am right now. That doesn't mean that's how I want to be. So I'm going to make a choice. I'm going to be conscious of like
Sure.
the fact that this is probably not helpful in this arena of work or
Mm-hmm.
home or wherever. Um and yeah, I think that's so important, but I also recognize how most of us believe that we know ourselves well enough.
Mm-hmm.
A test, a questionnaire can't tell me more about me than I know about me. And it's like, oh, you know what the questionnaire can tell you is what you don't know about you. What you don't, maybe you won't want to agree with. Maybe
Yeah.
you'll be like, there's no way. Listen to me. It, you gave it the answers. It's not a fortune reading. You gave it the answers. It's just spitting back out what it knows about you. And so
Yeah.
I think sometimes that can be a hard one to swallow when you're like, that's not me.
Mm-hmm.
But the crazy thing about it is sometimes it aligns with everything everybody around you's been telling you about yourself. And you're like, that's not me. It's like, when do you get to the point where you're like, all right, God, maybe this is me. Like, maybe they're all right. And maybe we were talking about that yesterday of how people will fight with the idea that they could possibly be this way
Mm-hmm.
when everybody and everything around them is telling them, and they won't go to like God to say, all right, maybe there's truth to this.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you reveal to me where I'm falling short in this, where I'm not, what I'm not seeing. Can you open my eyes to knowing who I really am and not who I've been pretending to be,
Sure.
because this is what I've seen all my life. And I think you spoke to
Yeah.
that today.
Yeah. I mean, I think about the scripture of, take the log out of your own eye before you point out the speck in your brother's eye. And I think
Mm,
that's talking about blind spots, which we all have. And even for me, like, it's funny because literally like a couple weeks ago, my wife asked me to do something, and I was like, I just got home from working a workout, was tired, super hot outside too. So I'm just kind of like still just trying to recover from it all. And she asked me to do something, and apparently, like, I didn't even realize I did it, but I apparently I make this face when I like, if she asked me to do something, and I'm like, I'm in a low spot, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. In my head, I'm not doing it, and not making a face. And inside, I'm like, I'm managing this okay. Yeah, I don't want to do this right now, but in my head, I'm like, I'm hiding this, but I'm gonna still do it anyways. And just trying to manage it internally. Don't realize I'm actually showing it externally. And after
Right.
being married for 10 years, she sees it. I don't even see I'm doing it. And so I'm like, dang, like I gotta pay attention to this. Because I don't know if I'm doing this just here or if I'm doing this other places that people can see it, when I feel like I'm able to hide it, internalize it, and then, try to make the correct response externally. But I'm still learning, still have blind spots. I think we all gotta be willing to know that. I think, like, for me, what my wife and I was talking about, we try to do like the 1% rule of being like, whenever we're in a conflict, when we're in an argument, that we both keep 1% of our mind open to the fact that we could be completely wrong about something. Not just like, oh, you're right, I'm wrong. I'm talking like a paradigm shift of like, whoa, like I was completely wrong. And as long as you keep just a little bit open in the back of your head while, they're saying, maybe you're doing X, Y, and Z, maybe you need to change in this area, that you just need to keep some level of openness to allow your mind to accept that paradigm shift, that you do have a blind spot somewhere. You do need to make this change in some way. But if you stay completely closed off, like I'm not wrong in this area, I'm 100% right, you're wrong, you're never going to see that blind spot. You're never going to see that change that needs to happen. And so we always try to, even though it's like painful in the moment, you're like, no, I know I'm in the right in this. Keep that little 1% of your mind open that you could be completely wrong. And I think that can really
That's
help in
good.
conflict.
That's good. And I, and for some people that percentage needs to be more than 1%.
Yeah.
Because
But even if it's one, it should be more. Yeah.
right,
But
right. It should be at least one. But yeah, no, I would go as far as saying the question is when did you actually come to that space of having the conversation? I feel like some people could step into a conversation sometimes earlier than they should have. And by the time they finally get forced into the conversation, that door is completely shut on that 1%. I am fully right. Not because I really am, but because the bitterness and everything has just set in. And I've been
sure.
holding on to this so long that outside of just the situation that's brought us to the table, I am still holding on to all of this other stuff. And so I'm going to be right today, even though you may be making valid points about tomorrow. And so, no, I on top of like, yeah, come to the table with that 1%, I would say come to the table sooner than later. Like, don't just sit on that stuff that I'm just trying to keep the peace. Yeah, but know that sometimes the conversations that feel like confrontation are the conversations that are going to keep the peace.
So true.
And I've learned that personally more times than I can begin to like talk about. And I'm talking about on both ends, but more importantly, just me, I've recognized it. Like like you, I just tried to like whatever it to just became more than I was fresh out of whatever's. I was fresh out of like, let it goes. I had exceeded it. The problem was it was all compiled inside of me. I was just stuffing it away. And eventually when I ran out of just like, whatever, it's cool, I realized my bag was full of like, you are mad now because of something that happened 2 years ago that you just still been holding on to. And now you got this catalog of stuff. Let's start with back in 1990 when you did this. And it's like, hold up. Wait a minute. Like, and nothing good comes from that.
Yeah.
Nothing good. Let me tell you, nothing good comes from that. Because in 1990, I could have just simply said, hey, look, I felt like the way you addressed me or the way that you said that, it made me feel some type of way.
Mhm.
And maybe that was your intentions. Maybe you didn't recognize it. Maybe it came from the day you had, and I just caught a stray. But being open to realizing that there's a story behind everything, and sometimes you need to get all the details to fully be able to understand. Not that it excuses behavior, but it at least allows you to set to, if you have an ounce of empathy, you can say, you know, I didn't realize that that happened that day leading up to this. And
Mhm.
not that it changes your behavior, but at least allows me to understand that, like, there was something behind that that had nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Um, Instead of like holding on to that for like 10 years and like now I'm gonna it started here at point exhibit A and it's like run to exhibit Z, and I want to show you all these things, John. And so no, that's something I'm constantly working on.
And it's in the famous wedding verses in Corinthians of around love keeps no record of wrong. Like that's a pretty specific thing to add. We're talking about love is not keep that list. You know.
Living up to God's view of love is I there listen, the very first time that I really understood First Corinthians 13 and I understood how he loved me, because at this point I have been loved up on him so much to
Mm-hmm.
then realize, so this is why that love feels so strong, because I've kept records of the things I've done, but you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm remembering all the sins that I've done
Mm-hmm.
that you've forgotten and forgiven me for. And so I understand why I don't feel worthy of your love, because my love, the way I love, is not like how you love. And I've never understood that level of love. And so to begin to love others that way, you have to experience that love, and you have to like almost have this moment where you're like, I can't make sense of this. My brain and the way I've always seen love, it this doesn't make sense. Nobody's just forgiven me like that. Nobody's just offered me grace like that. And it's easy to say, well, hey, look, because nobody else is offering it, why should I start? But I think that's what we're called to do. That's what leaders are called to do.
Yep.
They're supposed to be the ones who step out first and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm going to offer what nobody else is offering, in spite of the fact that they're not offering it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't say thank you. Okay, so what's keeping you from saying thank you? What is keeping you? Nothing,
Mm-hmm.
not their lack of it. And so I think that's like you said, I have to wake up every day and I have to choose to be non-selfish, because the selfish me says, I'm going to match your energy.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm going to match the energy that's in me right now that says I'm still sleeping. I don't want to be bothered. That's good. It's
I think of
beautiful.
like for me, what's probably one of the best descriptions is the Good Samaritan in the Bible. For me, that's probably stood out as probably being the most powerful examples of love. And this is obviously more for even just loving others, but applies to everything, because there's just so much tied up in that passage of the fact that you have the whole um people that the group of people he was talking to were not fan of Samaritans, right? So like you have that aspect of what's very interesting of just kind of the bias people have even going into this story is a major theme
Right.
of that.
Right.
So you're already starting to back foot, for trying to love someone that this group of people looks down on. And but what was so crazy is the Samaritan man, was clearly on a journey, going from wherever. It was like a 13 or 15 mile journey, whatever. It was a long journey of walking, and he chose to be inconvenienced. You had the priest and the temple assistant totally skip over this man, didn't show love to him, and he's the one that actually stopped. He paid attention. He was aware of the pain he was going through, had compassion on him, and chose to be very inconvenienced, unplanned, and to be
Mm.
completely selfless, gave of his resources. He gave him, the olive oil to bandage his wounds, and actually took him to the next spot, to the next inn where he'd be able to get medical care, a place to stay, stayed with him overnight, and then paid for his medical bills. And if you think about that in the context of like our lives right now, like that's extremely difficult. Like imagine just driving to work one day and someone's on the side of the street and being able to completely stop what you're doing. What would that look like? It'd be very messy to actually go through that. You have to probably like, lay down your back seat, slides, get someone into your car, take someone to a hospital, take someone, pay for their medical bills. And like it really, it's if you think about a modern version of that, it's crazy to think about that love. It's just choosing to be inconvenienced. It's choosing to be generous and selfless with your resources.
Wow.
It's choosing not to be tied to your schedule. And there's so many things behind that. So when I think about loving people, that's a really high bar to go love people. And so that's what I'm convicted by and challenged by, is that specific passage.
Man, that was. Look, you got me sitting over here and I'm like, whoa. And don't get me wrong, I know the story, but I have not. That is one story I haven't visited in a while.
Yeah.
And as you begin to share that, I thought about some of the people that are the hardest to love because of whether it be my beliefs, whether it be my values, whether it be the relationships I have or had. Knowing that, okay, this is going to be inconvenient. This is going to be uncomfortable. But God is calling us to love those, not just those who are easy to love, those who are in our community, those who are in our neighborhood, or our close, friendly neighbors, but those who don't look like us, those who don't believe the way we believe, those who are maybe just living a sinful life and just don't want to have anything to do with your Christian faith. And he's saying, I want you to love them as well. I want you to care for them. I want you to check on them. I want you to go and be inconvenienced in the way of how you love them. And I recognize that the fact that I haven't heard that parable in a long time, it speaks to this, I believe, to the space that we are in this world right now of like, yeah, let's forget about that parable. Like, because then that's going to make me have to go and love somebody in a different political party from me or a different neighborhood than me. And I would just rather like stay in my own community and just love on these people I know, or this is a big one. I will go out of the country on a mission trip and love people all the way in Ghana or somewhere.
Sure.
But I don't even want to love the people across town.
Or even my spouse, even my family at times,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Crazy.
Wow. Man, got me really thinking now because not to say that it's something I struggle with, but like you say, there are blind spots sometimes where I'm missing moments where I didn't even think to consider that, because you always have that thought of somebody else will do it. Somebody else will handle that. And that's the same thought process that the two men that walked past initially thought, oh, somebody else will handle that. Yeah. I'm busy. I'm late. Somebody else will get that. Somebody else will take care of him. I'm sure. And wow, dang, Chip, way to make me really sit here and ponder that one, because that's good. That's so good. I feel like sometimes it's overlooked because I recognize how I've allowed, whether it be the news, and I don't even watch the news, but like the little bit of news that creeps through to me, whether it be through social media or whatever, to like dictate how I show up for other people. Like, I'm always one to say, hey, look, it doesn't matter how you look or where you come from or where what your views are. You know,
Mhm.
I want to step in and love everybody, but then you're matching the love of that parable with the love that Christ has for us, and it's saying, okay, well, let me see you show up in love
Mhm.
for other people's lives, in other people's lives, not just the ones that are around you. Like, go over to uh, I always joke with a close mentor and a father figure in my life, and I say, we should show up at a pride parade and love on everybody there the same way we
Mm.
love on everybody and it's less about, well, their values don't align with mine. So what? So what?
Yep.
Like that's the problem. We believe that in order to love people, they have to have the same values, the same
Mhm.
thoughts, same beliefs as us. And it's more about saying that regardless whether your values or beliefs ever look like mine, doesn't change the fact that I can't stop
Mhm.
and see you and love on you and help you and assist you, and not because I'm hoping to change you, but
Mhm.
simply because I want to be more like Christ. And
Mhm.
that's what he's done. And that's what he did
Sure.
on multiple occasions to show us how it looks, not just through a parable, but through his own actions. It's good. It's
Yeah,
good.
and there's also danger in, self-righteousness too, right? With all that, of not being obedient, in the sense that we all fallen short. So just because someone lives a certain lifestyle, like I'm a sinner, like thankfully, like I'm, I'm forgiven, but I'm no more righteous in at least my own effort. Like we're all sinners, and I'm still
Sure.
never going to live this life out perfectly. I'm still going to sin, and so it's unfair. It's really kind of like the Pharisees of just being able to think you're more self-righteous, and so I think we never need to leave. We can never leave that of how, as Jesus said, I came not for those that are healthy, but those that are sick, essentially, or at least those that think they're healthy. I came to those that were sick, thinking that, like, again, like I'm not perfect, and so nor is any other, you know, people group and whatever they believe. Uh, we're all in this together in the sense that we're not some more self-righteous. We're just righteous because we believe in Jesus and He cleanses us of
Sure.
our sins. But
Right.
um, but that self-righteousness can keep us from showing that love. Is what I'm getting at.
For sure.
So
Yeah. No. I think as you said that, I think a lot of people graduate from this sinner saved by grace to the righteousness of grace or the
yeah,
righteousness of Christ. And they don't realize that you are sinner saved by grace and the righteousness of Christ. I'm no longer a sinner saved by grace. I'm just the righteousness of Christ. And the righteousness of Christ doesn't allow me to actually deal with the sinners that need to be saved. So they only see themselves one way and never
yeah,
in a light of like, I've been both. I've been
hmm
you and I'm still you
yes, yes,
saved by grace,
yeah, yeah,
which makes me the righteousness of Christ. I, I, I mean, I think we all look. We're both in church. We both have communities there where we sometimes see things where we're like, it's not it. We didn't hit it there. There was a missed opportunity. We
yeah,
could have done better. Like we
yeah,
could have showed up better. Um, I think it's these moments, these conversations where people hear and it makes them sit there and be like, yeah, I might have missed the mark a little bit.
hmm
I could have showed up better. That that
yeah.
that was a great reminder. I felt convicted after listening to that. Man, these guys started off really good. I was good with this, and then all of a sudden they went there, and I was like, I don't
I
like
feel it
this
myself.
podcast anymore. Next one. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Thought this is a guy's podcast. Like these brothers just started making me feel some type of way about how I show up. It's been good though. It's been good though. It's been good. Trust me. It's a great refresher for me because it now makes me say, okay, it's not just about like showing up every day to where I look great, but it's also showing up every day in where it may not be pretty. It's definitely not going to be perfect, but I can show up in a light to where in my imperfections,
Mm-hmm.
I truly want to be the righteousness of Christ.
Yeah.
That's been saved by grace
Mm-hmm.
as a sinner. And I'm not so far clean and blemishless that I can't come over and sit down with you who feels less than, who feels lost, who feels hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I always say, man, I know we're called to them.
Mm-hmm.
We got to go outside of our comfortable church communities to be called to others who aren't and don't. And it's not about just bringing them in to where the comfort zone of where we're at, but it's like going out there and sitting with them and being like, yeah,
Yep.
Let's have church here. Let's have church right here where you're at right now.
That's it.
I'm going to bring Christ out here, and I'm going to show up not to try to convert you, but to show up to love you and let God do the rest. I'm going to let God do the rest because He will. It's not my job. I'm going to let Him do the rest. So, bro, this has been good, man. This has been good, man. We went to church. Today. I like it, man. I feel charged up, man. My family will thank you later. You can send them a bill for how I'm going to step out of this studio because it's a great. All these are great reminders, and I love it. I love it. Well, bro, before we get out of here, man, is there anything else that you felt like God just put on your heart today that you was just like, I don't think I gave it? I mean, you gave a lot there, but is there anything else that you felt like God just put on your heart today? Whether it be to speak to, I used to say you speak to the men that listen, but honestly, they're, my graph of men to women that listen, it's about 50-50. So thank you for all my women listeners who sit through and listen to these episodes and truly enjoy them as much as the men who, I really catered these conversations for to see how God continues to work in our lives. But more importantly, I realize women want to see how God is working in their lives to, I'm going to say, it can happen for these brothers. Then there's still hope for my husband. God's not done yet. He's not. Listen, it's just a matter of maybe getting them in the right communities. And this is a great community to send this clip, share this clip with your husband, share this conversation and these podcasts with your husband. I mean, hey, look, sometimes it's just a matter of seeing other men living in a certain way, believing a certain way, recognizing they're imperfect, they have faults, but they desire to be more like Christ.
Well, I honor you for what you're doing here, because I think it also, whether men or women listening, I think even for women that are listening, they can understand what men go through and what they think about and the struggles they go through, right? And it's unique to men and women, and you can learn from everyone, So I think for me, what just kind of popped in my head as we're going along here, you kind of mentioned it earlier on of just dealing with thoughts that were not sufficient, and thinking through the imposter syndrome, thinking through I'm not good enough, whether it's being a husband, being a father, soon to be father like myself, or whether it's in a workplace or providing, etc. I think is really what stood out to me is actually in it's Adam and Eve, man, back in Genesis when Adam, when they ate the fruit, they became naked and they became aware they were naked and shameful. And I love what God said first to him, because he was trying to hide, and he said, I was trying to hide because I was naked. And the most powerful thing that I think, just again, wanted to share is that God said is, who told you that? And so I think for me is like, as we think about the thoughts we're having and specifically the insufficient ones where we're not enough, it is really thinking that I love how God starts that conversation. He starts it by saying, who told you that you were naked? But it's whatever thought you're having, who told you that you weren't enough? Who told you that? Because it wasn't from me. And so I think that's a really powerful thing, that Satan's always trying to get in and trying to put these thoughts in that are not right, that are not healthy, that are going to try to pull you away from your calling. And so I think overall, just, question that and question it from God's eyes of saying, who told you that? Because he's clearly saying, like, that thought wasn't from me, So
whoa,
that's what
came to me.
You gotta share.
Man, he gave you a mean ender. Okay. Why would you do that at the end of the episode like that? I mean, that's good. Chip, never seen that. And I'm not a Bible study or anything like that. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I've studied the
No
Bible
special
back and
training.
forth,
Yeah.
but that
Yeah.
was good. Who told you that?
Yeah, it's helped me. And it was a recent thing. Last handful of months, I was reading through it. I was like, whoa. In fact, I'm a certified coach. And so like, for me, that's like a really good coaching question to someone.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
God was like being a coach to Adam in that moment of just questioning, like, who gave you that belief? Who gave you that thought? So powerful stuff.
That's ingrained on me now. Who told you that? Who told you that? Yeah, I'm not gonna shake that one. That's good, brother. I appreciate you leaving us with that. That's so good, and that's a great question to leave out on. Like, who told you that?
Yep.
Who told you that? You can step away. I mean, when this podcast ends, that is a great question to start to ask yourself. Who told you that? Wow, that's powerful. Hey, God, look, it's these moments where I'm like, way better at us talking than we are. I don't think we could even halfway hit the mark. But man, the way you use us and speak through us, that was powerful. And reveal, yes. Awesome. Well, Chip, thank you so much for your time today, brother. I'm so glad I got to know you more. And I'm excited about like continuing on. You know, I don't look at these conversations as just like, oh, one hitter quitter. Hey, it's great meeting you, Chip. Like, no, honestly, Miami used to be one of the places that I used to love to go. No longer that reason, but I still love Miami.
Yep.
I still excited about, I told Sammy next time he comes down there and goes to VU, I'd love to attend with him. I've never been before. I'd love to join you guys. Yeah. But no, I really appreciate you, brother. I'm excited about what your journey is going to look like. Your next season is going to look like. I pray that, what God has for you, what he's going to do through you, and what he's going to do in the life of the seed that he's giving you, the daughter that he's giving you, is going to be a blessing not only to your family, but to the world. And I'm excited about what's going to happen next in your life. And I'm just excited to continue to keep up with you, whether it be through social media or just reaching out just to say, hey, man, I need a coaching tip, bro. I need to just be uplifted real quick. Give me something. Throw me something like you just gave us, but I appreciate that, brother. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for everybody who listened and just truly got to soak up all of this, the conviction and good stories. It was all good. And I appreciate everybody for joining us. I appreciate everybody who continues to share these episodes, continues to like these episodes, continues to subscribe and all the good stuff that people say. But, regardless whether you subscribe or anything, if you just listen, that's good enough. I think there's so much here. I think there's so much that you could pull from. And I think that's all God has really called us together to do this for. So you all be blessed. Thank you again, Chip. Hey, Chip, by the way, before we get out of here, I'd love it if you could share some of your information just so people could maybe connect with you,
For sure. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Robert. This has been a blast and same, looking forward to staying in touch with you as well. And glad we got to do this together. And Chip Teresi, feel free to follow me on IG. It's CPTIII, which is Charles Philip Teresi III. Also got a YouTube channel that's in its early phases, but really I do university recruiting is what I've been doing the last 7 years professionally. And so I have a YouTube channel called Chipping Away, and just to be able to help really college age students in career prep. I've helped hire over 1,000 students for internships and recent grad jobs. And so tips for career fairs, resume tips, interview tips, but it could really probably help anyone in a recruiting process. So feel free to check that out. If you're in Miami, hit me up, grab coffee. Big part of VU Church down here. It's a big part of our lives. And but really appreciate you having me on, Robert.
Yeah, no, thank you. I checked out your channel too, by the way. They're great tips, not just for those who are getting into the job world, but they're great reminders for those of us who are like, oh, I forgot about that. So no, I chip it away. I was actually going to mention that, but I was like, I'll let him bring it up. But chip it away. I loved it. I loved it. Well, brother, thank you again. Thank you all for listening. We will catch you on the next episode. All right, you guys be blessed. Love you all.
We appreciate you listening today and hope that if you enjoyed this episode, you'll like and subscribe and also listen to past episodes. We hope to bring you great future content as well. Please comment your thoughts on this episode as well as leave any prayer requests below so that this community can pray alongside you. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook at God's Glory and Israel Stories.
Brothers, we understand how the thoughts of even facing your own past and current story and the pain and hurt that come along with this is no easy task. But you're not alone, as you hear in these episodes. Nor has God forgotten you or left your side, as He's in it with you, fighting alongside you through the storms of life. He loves and has already forgiven you, no matter what you have done, and He wants a relationship with you. Your healing, freedom, and growth are important to God, and to us as well. Maybe you're considering giving up or need someone to talk to. Here are a few resources that already exist that we hope can shine a light into that dark place you're in. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number is 1-800-273-8255. If you need support but are not in crisis, consider reaching out to a warm line with individuals who would love to talk with you. Speaking to someone on these calls is typically free and confidential and run by people who understand what it's like to struggle in life. Find a local number by going to warmline.org.